did there. Meantime Amadis asked Oriana what Archelaus had said to her. "He told me not to grieve," said she, "for within 15 days he would make me Queen of London, and give me Barsinian for my husband, to whom he was to give me and my father's head, and be made his high steward in return." "Holy Mary," quoth Amadis, "Barsinian, who seems such a friend! I fear lest he do injury to the queen." "Dear friend," cried Oriana, "hasten on." "I must to my sorrow," replied Amadis, "for else I should have delighted to pass 4 days here in the forest with you, if it had pleased you." Oriana answered, "God knows how willingly, but great evil might happen thereby to this land, which, if God pleases, will one day be yours and mine." As soon as it was morning, Amadis armed himself, and leading his lady's bridle, rode on fast as they could towards London. Everywhere they met knights 5 by 5 and 10 by 10, as they were seeking the king. More than 1,000 they met, and they told them which way the king had gone, and how Gaylor was in quest of him. When they came within 5 leagues of London, they met Grumedan, the good old knight who had fostered the queen. 20 of his lineage were with him, and they had all night long been scouring the forest. Seeing Oriana went towards her, weeping. "O God, my lady, what a good day with your coming! But what tidings of the king?" They told him what they knew, and Amadis said to him, "Take you charge of Oriana, and bid all the knights that you shall meet turn back, for if numbers can succor him, there are already more than enough gone. I must go with all speed to protect the queen." With that he galloped away. At the entrance of the city he found the squire whom Luzart had sent with news of his deliverance, and learnt also the state of the city. So entering as privately as he could, he went to Arabin, who embracing him right joyfully, and asked, "What news?" "As good as heart could wish," quoth Amadis. "Let us go to the queen." He took with him Lasdin's messenger, and kneeling before Brisenda said, "Lady, this squire has left Luzart safe and well, and I have left Oriana with your forester Grumedan. They will soon be here, but I must look after Barsinian." He then changed his shield and helmet that he might not be known, and bade Arabin throw down the barriers, that the traitors might come freely on, for by God's help they should pay dearly for their treason. The barriers were thrown down, and Barsinian pressed on at the head of his people, thinking that all would now be his. For his own men were many, and his enemies few, and he was eager to seize the queen. The king's party gave back, being overpowered. Then Amadis went forth. He had on a rusty helmet and a plain shield hanging from his neck, but he was soon judged to be a good one. And he went on making his way through the press, and having the good sword of Luzart by his side, he forced his way to Barsinian, and encountered him, drove his lance through shield and corslet, and left a broken spear in him halfway of its iron. Then drew he his sword, and smote off the crest and top of his helmet, and the scalp of his head, for the sword cut so finely that Amadis could scarcely feel the blow he gave. With another stroke he sheared through the gauntlet and hand, and the sword passed through the bone of the wrist, fell on the leg, and entering in half through. Then Barsinian fell, and Amadis turned upon the throng, and King Arabin was so pressed that they who could escape slaughter ran to the tower and made fast the gates. Amadis, finding he could not force entrance readily, went back to Barsinian, and finding him still alive, ordered that he should be carried to the palace and kept till the king's return. Then, the strife being over, he looked at the bloody sword which he held in his hand. "Sword," quoth he, "in a happy day was the knights born who shall wield you, and certes you are well employed, for being the best in the world, you belong to the noblest king." He then disarmed himself, and went to the queen, and Arabin was laid in his bed, as there was great need, for he was sorely wounded. At this time King Luzart was hastening back to London. Of the knights whom he met, some he made turn back, others he sent through the valleys and by all roads to recall their comrades from their search. The first whom he met were Argaves and Galvanes, and Solans and Galdan, and Diniadas and Bervas, all 6 together, making a great moan, who, when they saw him, would have kissed his hand, but he joyfully embraced them. "Sir," said Dinadan, Dinadus. The whole city are in quest of you like madmen. Nephew, replied the king, take some knights with you and carry my shield, that you may be sooner obeyed, and turn back all whom you meet. This Dinius was one of the best knights of his king's lineage, and well esteemed among all good knights, as well for courteous bearing as for his good chivalry and prowess. When they came into the high road to London, and they fell in with Grumedan, the king's so dear friend, who was conducting Oriana home. And I will tell you their pleasure was exceedingly great, and the old man told him how Amadis was gone to the queen's succor. Presently they heard news what Barsinian had done, and how King Arban had defended the city, and how by the coming of Amadis all had been ended, and the traitors taken. By the time the king reached London, there were in his company more than 2,000 knights. When he came to the palace, who can tell the joy that was made? Immediately he had the tower surrounded, and having made Barsinian and the cousin of Archelaus confess the whole manner of their treason, they were both burnt in sight of their own people, who, having no provisions, neither any remedy, in 5 days came to the king's mercy, and he executed justice upon some, and pardoned others. Thus ended this treason, but it was the cause of much enmity between the countries of Great Britain and Sansuna, for a son of Barsinian, who was a good knight, came afterwards against Lusart with a great power. These dangers over the court proceeded as before, making great pastimes and festivals as well by night in the town as by day in the fields. On one of those days the lady and her sons arrived, before whom Amadis and Galer had made their covenant with Mandisima. They, seeing her, went honorably to bid her welcome. Friends, she said, you know wherefore I am come. What will you do in this case? Will you not keep your promise? For today is the time. In God's name, replied Galer, let us go before the king. Let us go, quoth she. Then coming into the presence, the lady made her obeisance, and said, Sir, I come here to see these knights perform a covenant which they have made. And then she repeated what they had promised to Masima, the lady of Galantacy. Ah, Galer, cried the king, you have undone me. Galer answered, better this than to die. If we had been known, all the world could not have saved our lives, and now the remedy is easier than you imagine. Brother, remember you have promised to follow my example. Then Galer related before the king and all the knights present by what treachery they had been taken. Sir King, said he, I now forsake you and your company for the sake of Messerima, the lady of the castle Gasanti, for it is her will to do you this displeasure, whatever other she can, for the hatred she bears you. Amadis affirmed what his brother had said. Have we performed our covenant? Then said to Galer, to the three witnesses, they answered, Yes, truly, you have acquitted your promise. In God's name, quoth Galer, and now you may return when you please, and tell Masima that she has not made her terms so cunning as she thought. As you may see, sir, we have kept our covenant with Masima, and forsaken your service, but it has not been stipulated how long we were to be out of your service. Therefore we are free to use our own free will, and freely again to enter your service as before. At this Lusart was greatly pleased, and said to the lady, Certes, these knights have fairly acquitted themselves of a promise so treacherously obtained, just as it is that they who deceived should be themselves deceived. Tell Masima that, if she hates me, she had it in her power to do me the greatest ill that could happen, but God, who hath preserved them from other pass, would not suffer them to perish by such hands. If it pleases you, sir, said the lady, tell me who these knights are. Amadis and Don Galer, her brother. What? Amadis was in her power? She cried. Now God be praised that they are safe. For certes, if it had been great misadventure, if two such good men had so perished. She will be ready for pure vexation to inflict death upon herself, which she designs for them. Truly, quoth the king, that would be more justly done. So the lady went her way.